So, what is up, amigos? Hope you're doing well. Not all battles are fought with swords, and not all revolutions begin with protests. Some take place in the quietest corners of a house, within the four walls of a kitchen, where the weight of expectation is heavier than any burden a woman willingly carries. Some wars are not declared but endured, fought every single day through unspoken rules, inherited customs, and a never ending cycle of thankless labor. How do you depict oppression when there's no violence, no raised voices, no dramatic confrontations, just the slow, soul crushing routine of a woman who realizes her life is not her own? Three films, three languages, one story. Yet, the discomfort they create is universal. This is the story of the Great Indian Kitchen, its Tamil remake with the same name, and its Hindi remake called The Missus, a quiet but necessary revolution against the silent servitude of women in our households. Cinema often thrives in spectacle, grand action sequences, intense monologues, and emotionally charged confrontations. But some of the most powerful films whisper rather than shout. The Great Indian Kitchen, first released in Malayalam in 2021, took an everyday setting and turned it into a suffocating prison. It wasn't just a story about one woman, it was a story about millions. Millions who wake up before the sun, cook, clean, serve, and repeat day after day without gratitude, without rest, without recognition. The protagonist doesn't suffer abuse in the traditional sense. There are no beatings, no screaming. Instead, there's the deafening sound of indifference, of expectations so deeply ingrained that no one questions them. This film was so impactful that it was later remade in Tamil in 2023 and now in Hindi as Mrs. in 2025. And the fact that this story works in every language, in every cultural setting, tells us something deeply unsettling. This is not just an issue of one region or one community or one household. This is a shared reality, an unspoken contract that generations of women have been forced to sign without consent. The Malayalam version of the Great Indian Kitchen is raw, slow burning, and relentless in its depiction of a woman's monotonous existence. The repetition of daily chores is not just shown, it is felt. The audience becomes as exhausted as the protagonist, watching her wash endless plates, knead the dough, wipe spills, and serve meals that she doesn't even get to enjoy herself. The men in the house exist in a parallel world, eating, belching, watching TV, and complaining when something isn't to their liking. They're not evil, they're simply conditioned. And that is the scariest part. The system is so deeply entrenched that no one sees anything wrong with it. The Tamil remake, starring Aishwarya Rajesh, retained the essence of the original but made slight changes to make the story more engaging for a wider audience. It didn't lose its emotional depth but ensured that the frustration of the protagonist was more visible. The silent suffering of the original was given a slightly louder voice, making it more gripping without losing its core message. The Tamil version also leaned a little more into the emotional beats, ensuring that even those unfamiliar with the original could connect with its message. Now, the latest Hindi version, Mrs., starring Sanya Malhotra, brings this important narrative to Bollywood audiences. This version tweaks certain elements to reflect the North Indian cultural setting but stays true to the original theme of how tradition and patriarchy are often disguised as love and duty. The setting may change, the characters may have different names, but the weight of expectation remains the same. The most disturbing part is that despite being told in three different languages, the core problem remains unchanged. A film like this can only work if its protagonist carries the weight of the narrative on her shoulders. In all the three versions, the performances are what truly breathe life into the suffocation, the frustration, and the quiet rebellion. Nimisha Sajayan in the Malayalam original delivered a performance that was more than just acting. It was an experience. With minimal dialogues, she conveyed emotions through expressions, through tired eyes, through the slight hesitation before pouring another cup of tea. Her frustration was so real, so internalized, that it felt personal. Aishwarya Rajesh in the Tamil remake brought her own touch to the role. She played the character with a bit more external frustration, making her resistance feel more immediate. Her performance ensured that the message of the film remained intact while adapting it for a Tamil audience that might prefer a more visibly expressive protagonist. And now Sanya Malhotra in the latest Hindi remake Mrs. gave another stunning performance, proving yet again why she is one of the most promising actors in Bollywood today. She brought a balance of quiet suffering and internalized rage, making her journey feel so relatable to modern Indian women who are trapped in tradition but are fighting to break free. With every glance, every movement, she reminded the audience that pain does not need to be loud to be valid. These three actors ensured that no matter which language you watch the film in, you feel the same discomfort, the same helplessness, and ultimately the same hope. One of the most powerful things about these films is that they force us to see the invisibility of women's labor. Cooking, cleaning, and managing a household are called work when done by a maid. But when a wife does the same, it is simply expected. The idea that this labor is not considered a job but a duty is deeply ingrained, and these films expose that reality without sugarcoating it. The conditioning of men and women in these families is another uncomfortable truth. While girls are still raised to adjust and compromise, boys are rarely expected to learn how to even cook or clean. Even in modern relationships where both partners may be working, the household responsibility somehow will fall on the woman. A working woman is expected to juggle career and home, but a working man is rarely expected to share the load of household chores. The most striking moments in these films are the ones that seem the most mundane on the surface, but are deeply revealing of systemic oppression. In The Great Indian Kitchen, there is a moment when the protagonist, despite being physically and emotionally distressed, is asked to serve water to her brother by her own mother. It is not a request, not a sign of care, but an expectation so deep rooted that no one sees anything wrong with it. A woman's exhaustion does not matter, her duties must continue. Another deeply unsettling sequence is when she is isolated during her menstrual period, considered impure and forbidden from participating in household activities. She is forced to eat separately, treated as an outsider within her own home, and is not allowed to touch common household items. It is not an act of cruelty from one person, but an inherited practice passed down through generations, normalized to the extent that no one questions it. In Mrs., the Hindi adaptation, Richa experiences similar oppressive expectations, but this time within the framework of a modern, seemingly progressive family. Her father-in-law subtly discourages her from pursuing employment, reminding her that a woman's true place is at home, reinforcing the idea that financial independence is a privilege rather than a right. Even more heartbreaking is the generational cycle of normalized oppression. Her own mother, instead of supporting her, finds it difficult to empathize with her struggles. Having been conditioned to accept such treatment as the norm, she unintentionally perpetuates the very system that confined her. Perhaps the most frustrating reality is the way women themselves have been conditioned to accept this treatment as normal. Many hesitate to voice their exhaustion because they have been taught that complaining makes them ungrateful. If a woman prioritizes her own dreams, she is often made to feel guilty, as if she is abandoning her duty. These films show not just the men's ignorance, but also the silent suffering of women who have been raised to believe that their life's purpose is to serve others. We celebrate progress, yet how much of it is real and how much of it is just convenience? We talk about women's empowerment, but how many of us still expect a hot meal waiting at the table without asking who made it? How many of us say share the responsibility when it comes to household work? How many of us still believe that a woman choosing to step outside the kitchen is a privilege, not a right? These films make us uncomfortable because they show us a mirror we don't want to look into. They don't present a monster we can hate, a villain we can blame. Instead, they expose the silence silent, everyday injustices that have existed for generations, normalized, unquestioned, and disguised as tradition. If you're a man watching this, ask yourself, when was the last time you took charge of the kitchen for more than just a special occasion? If you're a woman, how many times have you been made to feel guilty for choosing yourself over a responsibility you never signed up for? And if you're someone who believes that this doesn't apply to you, are you really sure? Cinema is at its most powerful when it doesn't just entertain, but when it unsettles you, when it makes you sit with your discomfort and ask, am I part of the problem? And if you are, what are you going to do about it? Thank you for watching, and bye bye.